Now, I was here last Sunday, but I wasn't here like up on stage. Now, when I'm up here on stage, this is what I see. It's a great viewpoint of the church, but I wanted to see something different. So last Sunday I showed up. Nathan was preaching, so I go to our kids area. I was like, hey, I want to work the kids check-in. That seems like a fun thing to do. Now, how hard can that be? Very, very hard. And so they're like, are you sure? I was like, yeah, just put me back there. So I'm back there, and people are coming up, and I felt the same way probably that cashier in training at the grocery store feels. Yeah, you do this. Like you're shopping, and you see the cashier in training, and you wave, and then you go to the pro, all right? This is what happened last Sunday. They're like, hey, Chris, we're going to go to the people that know what they're doing. But that happened, but, the line kind of got big. So eventually the poor soul had to come see me. And I was like, hey, so good to see you. And they're like, hey, we're here, and we're bringing in so-and-so and so-and-so. We got a birthday. And I'm like, oh, my goodness. Like, I start overloading. And the ladies there are like, just move over, Chris. We'll take care of it. So I was like, okay. But I hung out back there. And now here is what I noticed. And I was just so happy to see this. Something that I noticed about you standing back there is this, is that you are very normal people. Now, you're going, well, that's why do you say it? Let me just tell you why, my perspective. This is all I see on Sunday. You all look fantastic. You all look like you don't have a care in the world. You all look like you've got the perfect marriage, and your kids get themselves up in the morning and dress themselves and in the car waiting for you. That's what it looks like. But back there, that is not the case at all. You guys come in late, and you're fighting, and you're arguing, and you see me go, hey, God bless. You weren't just saying that. No, you weren't. Right, and you're just sitting there, and here's what I like, especially with the people that I knew coming in, especially only like 11:15, 11:20. I'd go, hey, the service starts at 11. Shut up, Chris. I loved it. Because I was like, oh, man, they're just like me. Like, they got all this, late and this and that. And because when you preach a sermon series called Not As Planned, you're going, I hope people connect with that. And the reality of it, standing back there last week, you do. And probably for the majority of us, things that we plan don't go the way we planned. They don't go fast enough. They don't go in the right direction. We don't make as much money. There's these things that we plan that we want to go in a certain direction or way. And if we're honest, more times than not, they don't. And so what happens is you experience that long enough, and all of a sudden you enter in this world of frustrating time. You're impatient. You're wanting things to go faster, quicker, go better. And you follow God. You walk in His ways. You go to church. You may be in a small group. You read your Bible, and it's not going as planned. Like you're walking through this season of singleness, and you go, man, she's getting married, and he's getting married, and I'm in all these weddings, but I have yet to get a date. I want kids, and my sister-in-law, man, they got kids on the very first try. We've been trying for a year or 2 years or 3 years, and you're in the season of infertility. Or maybe you're in this season of job transition, or maybe you're just in a dead-end job, or maybe your job has you traveling all over. You're just tired and worn out, and you're going, when is it going to change? This is not the way I had planned. And all of a sudden, you look at your life, and your house isn't big enough. Your bank account doesn't have as much money in there as you want. You don't have the job title. Your kids aren't getting in the schools that you want to. Things are not going as planned. You're going, God, do you even know that I'm here? Like, God, I follow you, I pray, I read my Bible, I go to church. I'm doing all these things. God, do you even know where I'm at? Like, I feel like I'm leading and walking, but God, I just feel like I'm in the midst of this season. Call it frustration, call it waiting, call it whatever it is, but you're just going, man, God, do you even know where I'm at? And today we're going to look at a character in the Bible. Actually, we're going to look at it this Sunday and next Sunday. And the character's name is David. And David is a famous character. Even if you're not a church person, you know of David. David and Goliath, king of Israel. But before all of those things happened, there were some moments where for David, it didn't go as planned. And I want to pull out this one just life lesson and I'm just going to tell you this personally. I learned years ago, and it is one of the most freeing life lessons I've ever learned. Like when I actually got this, not just head knowledge, but moved into heart and really believed and began to walk in this lesson. It was such a freeing thing for me personally, and I'm confident that if you allow it go from your mind to your heart today and go, you know what, I get this, I understand this, I know this to be true, and to lean into this lesson from the life of David, I am 100% confident you will begin to live a much freer life. That burden that you're carrying of walking through this season of uncertainty will all of a sudden become lifted if you allow this principle and idea to sink in. If you got a Bible, go ahead and grab it. Go to 1 Samuel chapter 16. 1 Samuel chapter 16. And again, if you grew up in church, you know of David, you know of his highs and lows in life. You know he wrote majority of Psalms, that kind of stuff. You know of David and Goliath. Even if you're not a church person, you know of David and Goliath. But we're going to look at a season of his life before the giant. But before that, and there was a season of his life where he was in the fields after something had been promised to him. The prophet Samuel, God told the prophet Samuel to go anoint a new king. Saul was king. God told Samuel, hey, you need to go. We need to anoint a new king. Samuel goes, where do I go? He goes, go to this guy. Jesse's house is one of his sons. Samuel goes to Jesse's house, knocks on the door. Hey, I'm here. So Jesse brings in his sons. Nope, all the way down. And all of a sudden, none of his sons are to be anointed. In 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 11. Then Samuel asked, are these all the sons you have? Well, they're still the youngest, Jesse replied, but he's out in the fields watching the sheep and the goats. Send for him at once, Samuel said. We will not sit down to eat until he arrives. So Jesse sent for him. He was dark and handsome with beautiful eyes, and the Lord said, this is the one, anoint him. So as David stood there among his brothers, Samuel took the flask of olive oil he had brought and anointed David with the oil. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David from that day on. Then Samuel returned to Ramah. Now, don't miss this moment. David wakes up that morning, shepherd boy. Dad says, go to the fields, wash the sheep and the goats. Yeah, this is what I do. He wakes up, wipes the sleep out of his eyes. This is what I do day in and day out. He's out there. He's probably wondering, man, where are my brothers at? Well, the older brothers do what they do. They leave me to tend the fields, and I don't know where they're at. And all of a sudden, somebody comes to David. Hey, they need you inside. What for? I don't know. Your dad just said to come inside. Well, why? I don't know, but Samuel's here. Oh, man. So he walks in, and all of a sudden, God tells Samuel, this is the one, anoint him. He anoints him the next king of Israel. He wakes up a shepherd boy, goes to bed, anointed the next king of Israel. That is a massive life change. That's a huge turning point. To wake up and your biggest concern is to keep all your sheep and goats together away from the wild animals, to go to bed going knowing that one day you're going to be the king of Israel. But then after that, he gets sent back to the fields with the sheep and the goats. So he's been anointed the next king of Israel and goes, go back to doing what you're doing. Meanwhile, the Philistines show up and they are going to fight the Israelites. They've got a bad boy on their team named Goliath. Goliath comes out and taunts the Israelites and goes, hey, send one of them to fight me. Israelites are scared to death. Jesse's sons are there, but David's back home with his dad. Jesse sends David, and look what happens in chapter 17, verse 17. One day Jesse said to David, take this basket of roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread, carry them quickly to your brothers, and give these 10 cuts of cheese to their captain. See how your brothers are getting along and bring back a report on how they are doing. So David goes from being a shepherd boy to being a glorified Uber Eats driver. That's what it was. He's there, Dad goes, bring him this food, cheese and bread, and bring me back reports. He goes there, and all of a sudden, Goliath comes out, and David starts asking questions. Who is this guy? What's he doing? I mean, he's kind of getting the lay of the land and asking questions, and all of a sudden, older brother gets word of it. Look at verse 28. But when David's oldest brother Eliab heard David talking to the men, he was angry. What are you doing around here anyway, he demanded. What about those few sheep you're supposed to be taking care of? I know about your pride and your deceit. You just want to see the battle. David, come on, dude. Just go back to Dad. Tell him we're fine. Thanks for the food. Get on out of here. You got those few sheep you need to take care of. Go on back to the fields. David, what? David, seriously, I mean, this is a man's place. You're a shepherd boy. You go back there. Instead of looking at him as King David, he looked at him as kid brother. That's still how he viewed him. But he's talking to the future king of Israel this way, going, David, what are you doing here? Look at David's reply, verse 29. What have I done now, David replied. I was only asking a question. He walked over to some others and asked them the same thing and received the same answer. Then David's question was reported to King Saul, and the king sent for him. And David goes, listen, I'm just asking some questions. I just want to know what's going on. King Saul gets word of it, calls for David. Look at verse 32. I love it. Don't worry about this Philistine, David told Saul. I'll go fight him. Don't be ridiculous, Saul replied. There's no way you can fight this Philistine, and possibly when you're only a boy and he's been a man of war since his youth. You're a shepherd. You're a kid. Go back to the fields. Go back to the few sheep. That is where you belong. Thank you for the food. Report back to your dad. Everything's going well. You are a boy. He is a man of war since his youth. Verse 34, but David persisted, and look what he says. I've been taking care of my father's sheep and goats, he said. When a lion or bear comes to steal a lamb from the flock, I go after it with a club, rescue the lamb from its mouth. If the animal turns on me, I catch it by the jaw and club it to death. Can we just stop and recognize the manliness of David? This is one bad dude. Now, I know some of you in this room, you think you're manly. You're not compared to David. I think we think of David, and he's just this cute little shepherd boy playing a harp and just this softy. This is the guy. It's not like, hey, I get a team of people and we fight. It's going, no. I grab it by the jaw and club it to death. Lions and bears. Oh, my. We'll switch. Come on. Right. Oh my is what we would say. You might say something different. I know you very well. But it's one of those where he goes, I'll just grab it by the jaw and club it to. In other words, he's going, it's not that big of a deal. I get it. I understand it. And look what happens. Verse 36, he goes, I've done this to both lions and bears, and I'll do it to this pagan Philistine too, for he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the claws of the lion and the bear will rescue me from this Philistine. Going, I got this. Look at what Saul's reply was. Saul finally consented. All right, go ahead, he said, and may the Lord be with you. Or in other words, rest in peace, dude. Whatever. You want to just, yeah, fine. Saul, I think, starts feeling, a little guilty, and so he gives him something to help. Look at verse 38. Then Saul gave David his own armor, a bronze helmet and a coat of mail, and David put it on, strapped the sword over, and took a step or two to see what it was like, for he'd never worn such things before. I can't go in these, he protested to Saul. I'm not used to them. So David took them off again. He picked up 5 smooth stones from a stream and put them in his shepherd's bag. Then, armed with only a shepherd's staff and a sling, he started across the valley to fight the Philistine, and the rest is history. The rest is David and Goliath. But before then, before he was famous, he was in the fields of anonymity where nobody knew him. He was in the fields anointing the next king of Israel, and everybody treated him as kid brother David. And here's the lesson that I want you to grasp. And if you hear nothing else today, this is what I want you to get and grasp. And it's what changed me years ago when I heard it in a very life-giving, freeing way. And the idea is this, is that God knows where you are at, and he can get you to where he wants you to be. God knows exactly where you are at, and he can get you exactly to where he wants you to be in his timing and in his way. And so I know you may be walking through a season of frustration, loneliness, infertility, bankruptcy, divorce, cancer, an illness that doctors can't figure out. And you're going, does anybody know where I'm at? And I'm here to tell you with 100% confidence that the God of the universe knows exactly where you are at, and he can get you to where he wants you to be. And so if you get that and you understand that, then the next logical question is going, okay, what do I do with where I'm at? What do I do when I'm in this field of, and you can fill in the blank whatever it is for you. What do I do? Let me just show you a couple of things that David did. I want you to go back and look at verse 36. 36, after he talks about grabbing him by the jaw, he goes, I've done this, meaning killed it, to both lions and bears. And he goes, I'll do this to the pagan Philistine too, for he has defied the armies of the living God. David said, listen, I can defeat Goliath, not with the bronze helmet and the sword, but he goes, no, I'm not used to that. He goes, here's what I can defeat him with, a slingshot and a shepherd's staff. Now, this is a slingshot that I borrowed from my son last night, and this is a walking stick with a rubber tip on the end, but you get it. This is it. Now, don't miss this. He learned to use these tools where? In the fields. In the fields. All by himself, his kid brother David doing what his dad had told him to do. It's not like all of a sudden he got this incredible new talent to wield a slingshot and a staff. It wasn't like he showed up and went through like this martial arts trainer like, hey, use a slingshot and a staff, this will work. They gave him a sword and a helmet, and he goes, man, I'm not used to these. This is what I know how to do. And so what David did when he was in the field is that he learned the tools that God would later use to defeat the giant. But all too often, our natural inclination is to complain. And so the question is, are you learning or are you complaining? Are you learning in the field where you're at, or are you complaining? Our natural tendency, instead of learning, going to God, I'm here, I don't like it, this isn't fun, God, but teach me to do something new, a new skill or trade, tools that I'm going to use later on. We go, man, I'd just much rather complain. I'd rather tell people how I feel and how things aren't going my way. Now, just really quick, you know complaining doesn't fix anything, right? Right? I mean, you've never like been on an airplane and the pilot gets on and goes, hey, we're going to be delayed, and you call the flight attendant and going, hey, yeah, this is not fun. I've got another flight to catch, and she goes, oh, let me tell the captain. She runs up to the cockpit, and all of a sudden the captain gets home. Well, folks, the passenger in seat 13A complained long enough. Let's get this bad boy in the air. That doesn't work. You ever had your kids complain to you? Oh, son or daughter, thank you so much for complaining. You can now get whatever you want. Like it doesn't work, but it feels good. And honestly, it's easy. Complaining is so easy. It takes no effort at all. No effort. When things aren't going your way, when you're in the field, it's so easy. Well, why am I here? I'm supposed to be the next king of Israel. Why am I messing with these sheep and these goats? And I'm running back and forth and delivering food to my brothers. I'm the next king. I should be out there. I should be the general in charge. I should be making the calls and the shots. But he's out there in the fields doing what God had called him to do, learning how to handle a shepherd's staff and a slingshot. Not for the wild animals that would attack, but for the giant that nobody could feed except David with the tools that he had learned to use in the field. So are you learning? Or are you complaining? Are you figuring things out? Are you going, God, show me, God, or are you just complaining? And you're going, well, Chris, real quick. Now, you've heard the old phrase, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, Chris. Yep. Well, if I squeak long enough, I'll get the oil. You know what? I used to believe that. I did until a little while ago. I was sitting at a buddy of mine's office. He runs a very large company. I was sitting on this side of the desk. He was sitting on that side of the desk. We were just talking about some things. And I saw something out of the corner of my eye, and I just started laughing. And he goes, what? And I said, I've never seen this sign before. And let me just show you this sign that he has sitting right in the front of his desk right there. And he kind of chuckled. He goes, yeah. He goes, it's just a good reminder for people sometimes. I thought, man, but it's so easy to complain. It's so easy to go, well, this shouldn't have turned out this way. I'm supposed to be king. This shouldn't be happening to me. But are you learning the things that God is wanting to teach you? Because the things you're learning there in the field where nobody knows you, or the things that you'll use in the next season of life. But if you don't learn them, if you don't understand, if you spend all your time complaining, then you waste this amazing opportunity to learn some things that God wants to teach you in order to use the next season of life. Are you learning or are you complaining? And then I want you to look at the very next verse. Look at verse 37. Verse 37 says, the Lord who rescued me from the claws of the lion and the bear will rescue me from this Philistine. Now don't miss this. The Lord who rescued me, past tense, when I've seen it, gives him the confidence to go, he will rescue me. There wasn't a question or a doubt in David's mind. There wasn't David going, well, if no one else is going to do it, I guess. I mean, give me 5 rocks. I got a 20% chance to hit him with 1. I hope it works out. Whatever. It's going, no. I've seen God deliver me from wild animals. I'm trusting he's going to deliver this Philistine, this giant, into my hands. Not only did David learn when he was in the field, he grew in his faith and his knowledge of the Lord in the field. And so the second question is, are you growing or are you comparing? Are you growing or are you comparing? Now, growing is different from learning in the fact that you maybe already know the skill or the task, but it's growing in your faith, in your knowledge of the Lord, and in your love and your forgiveness of others. It's growing in those areas, or do you compare? They've got it easier. They were born with a silver spoon in their mouth. Their dad's the president of the company. They've got a better job. They have a better opportunity. They had a better upbringing. And the truth is, they always seem more impressive than they really are. They always seem way more impressive. They always seem to have it way more together than they really do. Because the reality is what you and I see is a highlight reel. And we look at them at a snapshot and go, they got it, so easy. They don't understand. They never had any things. They always seem way more impressive than they really are. And we compare and compare as opposed to growing in the areas that God wants us to grow in. And so are you growing? Are you being stretched in your knowledge and faith of the Lord? David was confident. There wasn't any unassurity in his voice. There wasn't, oh gosh, it's 50-50. Let's hope it works. It's going, no. I'll go to feed them. And it's not because of anything that I've done, but I've seen God deliver before. In the fields where nobody knew me, in the fields where I was not famous, I've seen God deliver. So now here on the stage in front of everybody, he'll deliver. There is no question. So he grew in his knowledge and faithfulness. So are you growing or are you comparing? And growing is stretching, not necessarily learning a new skill or trade. Let me see if I can illustrate it best this way. Not me personally, but I've got some friends that have run marathons, okay? I cheer them on and pray for them, but they're good for them. But when you decide to run a marathon, going, I want to run a marathon, but I get winded just running around the block, okay? I've got a goal, and so that's a year out, and so you begin to train. And you go 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and you go from the block to twice on the block to a 5K to a 10K to half marathon to be able to run the marathon a year later. And you look back and you remember a year ago, you who couldn't even run around the block without getting winded. Now, you didn't learn literally how to run. You just grew in your endurance. You grew in your ability to go from around the block to a marathon. And then you see people starting off and going, man, I've been there. And if you hang in there long enough, you begin to grow. And you look back and you see how far you've come. And David goes, I've seen God deliver. And I've grown in my faith and in my knowledge and in my trust. And so I'm trusting he's going to deliver the giant in my hands. If you've ever looked back on a season of life, you've seen how far you've grown in a certain area. My oldest son, David's 10 years old, got a little job, started making some money. So about a month or so ago, we started teaching him Finances 101. Got a little money going, listen, David, you give 10% to God, that's tithe, you save a certain percentage, and then you spend a certain percentage. You give, and you save, and you spend. You give, you save, and you spend. Okay, we can start figuring that out. Started teaching how to do a financial ledger and kind of put that all in there. And then last week, we opened up a little bank account for him. We're just teaching him Money 101. And he's learning it, and he's understanding it, and he's learning money. But then last week, there was something that he's growing in. And not so much learning knowledge, but growing in an understanding of how money impacts you. So me and Brianna, he were in the kitchen, we're just chit-chatting, and he gets real serious. And he goes, man, it is a weird feeling. We're like, what's that? And he's saving up for like a tackle box is his next big thing. He goes, man, this is a weird feeling. He said, I want something really, really bad, but I don't have enough money to buy it. And he just paused. He goes, that's just the strangest feeling, Dad. And Brianna and I started laughing, going, that's a feeling you will have for the rest of your life, son. the rest of your life. Yeah, but I really want it, but yeah, I know. And son, and when you get older, some people's going to send you a little plastic card. Just don't do it, son. Just save up for it. But it was just this feeling. And Brianna and I, we remember echoing, you remember that first time you realized that? The feeling of growing and what that means and living by restrictions and a budget? And to see that in his little brain beginning to comprehend that, Brianna, I take it for granted, and so do you, but you go back that very first time you experienced that and how far you have grown since then. There may be an area of weakness in your life that God is wanting to grow you in and stretch you in before you go to the next season. And instead of growing, instead of learning, you begin to complain and compare. God, if this wasn't so difficult, I could walk through it. God, if I was in their shoes, it'd be a lot easier. And God's going, you're in your shoes. You're in the field that I have placed you in, and I know exactly where you're at. He hasn't forgotten about you. He isn't up in heaven going, now, where did I place them again? Were they in Georgia or somewhere? Where are they? He knows where you're at, and he can get you exactly where he wants you to be in his timing and in his way. And you're there in this field, and it's not fun. I get it. And it's not enjoyable, and it's painful. I get it. I understand it. And so you have this opportunity to learn and grow, to complain and compare. Now, don't miss this. It's easy to make the argument that David, throughout world history, fought the most famous battle in world history. One could make that argument. David and Goliath, we use it today as an adjective. Companies, sports teams, it's David versus Goliath. We use it. It's a very, one could argue, the most famous battle ever fought. And one could argue that David wrote the most famous poem in world history, Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Those two, the most famous battle and the most famous poem, were written when he was in the fields of anonymity, written from those experiences long before he became king. Right? So the battle that he fought, he learned the tools of the trade in the field. To be able to write Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, learn those experiences in the fields. It wasn't all of a sudden he became king and goes, now let me figure out how to fight a giant. Now let me figure out what it really means that the Lord is my shepherd. No, he learned those in the fields where nobody knew about him, long before he became famous and king. Long before he killed the giant with the slingshot. Long before he wrote Psalm 23, he was there day in and day out, doing exactly what God had called him to do, watching a few sheep and goats, running food back and forth to his brothers as the next anointed king of Israel, but not yet. And some of you are going, man, that just feels like it's been forever. It's been weeks, months, years, decades. And I'm here to tell you that God knows where you're at, and he will get you where he wants you to be in his timing and in his way. You know, what you're walking through, I get it. It's painful, it's ugly, it's frustrating, it's whatever adjective you want to use to describe it. But here's the thing. The reality is, it's not going to change much. There's not much you can do to change it. If there was something you could do, we would have done it already. But you're walking through this period of life, this field of whatever it is, that you can't change. So knowing that you have to walk through it, my question to you is, how much further along in life could you be if you made the decision to learn and grow rather than to complain and compare? Like, you got to walk through it anyway. Like, you can't change it. So you got to go through it anyway. So you're going, this is going to happen whether I like it or not. I can sit here and complain about it and compare my life to everybody else. Or I can say, Lord, teach me some things I need to learn. Grow my areas of my heart and my mind where I need to grow. How much further down the road in life would you be when you come out the other side going, man, it was brutal, it was painful, but I learned some new tools. It was frustrating and it was a long road, but man, God grew me in my faith and my knowledge of him. And now I'm a much better person for it. Now in this next season of life, wherever it may take me, I've got the tools that I've learned to use, and I've got the heart that's grown in faith and knowledge of the Lord, because I decided not to complain and compare, but to know that I'm here, God knows where I'm at, and he will get me exactly where he wants me to be. going to finish with this, and it's Psalm 23. And I know you've read it, you know it, but I want to read it again. I want you just to think of it through the lens of a guy sitting in a field anointed the next king of Israel. He knows it. His brothers knows it. His dad knows it. He's there in the field. And I just want you to read this poem, this psalm, through that lens and think about it that way. He's in the field, anointed the next king of Israel, but there in the field with a few sheep and goats. And he's able to pen this from personal experience. The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. He lets me rest in green meadows. He leads me beside peaceful streams. He renews my strength. He guides me along right paths, bringing honor to his name. Even when I walk through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid, for you are close beside me. Your rod and your staff protect and comfort me. You prepare a feast for me in the presence of my enemies. You honor me by anointing my head with oil. My cup overflows with blessings. Surely your goodness and unfailing love will pursue me all the days of my life. Whether in a field or in a palace or fighting Goliath, your goodness and mercy will pursue me all the days of my life. And he says, and I will live in the house of the Lord forever. God knew exactly where David was at, and God knew exactly where God wanted him to be. And man, my hope for each and every one of you is, I don't know where you're at in life, I don't know what you're walking through, but God knows exactly where you're at. He knows what you're going through, and he will get you exactly where he wants you to be in his timing and his way. The question is, will you learn or will you grow from where he has you? We pray for us. Every head bowed and every eye closed. Father, I thank you for the example of David. Father, I pray for the people here in this room that are walking through whatever field it is that they're walking through. Bankruptcy, divorce, cancer, infertility, not getting into the school that they wanted, loneliness, singleness, those fields where it seems like it will never, ever end. God, my prayer is that you would remind them right now that you know exactly where they are at, and you will get them exactly where you want them to be. And Lord, my prayer is that you would teach all of us what you want us to learn in these places. And you would grow our hearts, our faith, our love, our forgiveness in the ways that they need to be grown and stretched. So that when we do get through this season, when we do get out of the field, we look back and see your hand in it all. Say, God, I learned the tools that I'm using now back in those days. God, my faith grew in ways I had never thought it could grow because of what you brought me through. I pray for every person in this room. We love you and ask these things in your name, Jesus. Amen.